This video is made in response to Glocktane's recent Myth and Myther video. I'm happy to see high-effort YouTube content in this game, and the luck videos are straight up the Lord's work. Thank you. Almost all the information in the Myth and Myther video is well presented and accurate. However, a bit of it is incorrect and helps to perpetuate some common misunderstandings in this game. In this video, I'll be taking a much deeper dive into Curse Mastery's effect on Cursive Pain, and also having a bit of fun with Ray of Darkness and cast speed. First off, I'd like to try to tackle a misconception. Health in Dark and Darker is stored as a floating point number. This has a few quirks, but the important thing to know is that it can represent rational numbers, not just integers. For example, one could have 137.4873 health. Damage is also calculated in this way. When a player reads their health bar, that health number has to be converted to an integer, and is always rounded up. Similarly, when the test dummy shows instances of damage, the dummy takes damage and floats, but can only display integer damage numbers. This means that when trying to test the damage of attacks, the only reliable way is to test on another player, who can check their health bar. Multiple instances of damage can be pooled together to try to isolate the fractional damage value. Knowing that, let's take a look at Cursive Pain. Even without Curse Mastery, Cursive Pain's damage is not simple. The description for Cursive Pain states that it does 15 with 1.0 scaling, damage instantly, and then 15 with half scaling, more damage over 8 seconds. If we ignore all of our stats, we would assume the spell does a total of 30 damage. Unfortunately, the full story is much more complicated. We need to add in the stats of the caster, and scale the damage by that. We need to add in the stats of the victim, and scale the damage, that isn't true damage, by that. We also need to consider magical penetration, which the weapons all have intrinsically, and reduce the victim's magical damage resist appropriately. Finally, the spell is calculated as ticks of damage that will happen every second. The 15 listed damage is only really true if all ticks actually happen to the victim. Having any debuff duration bonus on the victim will mean that they only take 7 ticks. But all of this is doable, and we can predict exactly how much damage a player will take, and exactly what their health bar will show at each point in the spell's duration. Let's look at a graph. Here, the x-axis represents the caster's magic power bonus. Under normal circumstances, we'd expect this to be somewhere between 0 and 1, but it can go higher. The green line is showing the damage of a single tick from Cursive Pain without Curse Mastery, and that's represented by this ugly formula here. Let's look at and play with the other variables. So we have B, which is representing the weapon's bonus magical damage. So for a white spellbook, it would be 2. And we can tell that this has a pretty strong effect. And then true is true damage, and this also has a pretty strong effect. If we wanted to know the damage from the whole curse playing out, then we would need to multiply by the number of ticks that the victim will experience. 7 is what would be most common, but geared players and/or clerics with protection from evil will experience fewer. Using a stronger weapon will increase the slope, making our magical power bonus even more effective, and true damage will raise the line up. Let's talk about Curse Mastery. Honestly, the way this is implemented is seriously arcane. It took quite a bit of testing to hone in on what is actually happening in the math behind the scenes, but we have the results, and here they are. The duration of the spell is increased by 30%, and that means 10.4 ticks. And yes, the spell does actually aim for its damage to play out in 10.4 ticks, even though that cannot happen in the game. It appears that, in order for the perk to not make the spell weaker, someone added in a factor for the damage. It should be this one. However, they added it only to the base damage of the spell, not with the weapon's magical damage taken into consideration. Interesting. And this would mean that casting with a weapon that has no magical damage, like the Crystal Sword, should do the same damage per tick as without Curse Mastery. However, they actually used 1/3, not 30%, so actually, Curse Mastery makes the spell tick harder in certain cases. Let's add it to the graph. With no weapon magical damage, Curse Mastery makes the spell more potent per tick. This is true still for 1, which would be a gray spellbook, 2, white spellbook, and just barely at 3, green spellbook. Once we get to 4, which could be a white crystal ball, the lead is lost, and Curse Mastery starts ticking for less damage. Let's go back to no weapon and look at true damage. Very similar thing happens, and Curse Mastery can quickly lose its edge. Given that a PvP kit will pretty much always have a healthy amount of both of these, it's safe to assume that Curse Mastery does lower the damage per tick. What about the total damage of the spell? Let's assume that a potential victim will have enough debuff duration to reduce it to 9 ticks, only about 6.5% debuff duration, but that same victim would not be able to reduce a regular Curse of Pain to 6 ticks, which honestly is still low at only 12.5% debuff. Curse Mastery looks to significantly increase the damage, but let's change these. 11 bonus damage is possible with Illusory, and back in the day when uniques would have one roll, loads of true damage was possible. Still, Curse Mastery has the lead in total damage. It is possible, between 12.5 and 13.4 debuff duration, to have the Curse Mastery ticks go down to 8 without changing the normal tick amount. Even then, it still increases total damage, but not by very much. Based on all of this, what can we try to conclude about Curse Mastery? It looks like it increases damage per tick in a Squire book kit, and barely decreases damage per tick in a Squire ball kit, so for Squire PvP it's probably worth running. For geared PvP, it definitely decreases the damage per tick, though it will always result in more total damage per spell. I don't claim to be an expert at PvP at all, but I would assume that it depends on the playstyle. Running Curse Mastery and trying to hit follow-up Dark Bolts is probably viable. Running without Curse Mastery and just trying to hit another curse as soon as the first one comes off is also probably viable. Because getting the initial damage is worth so much, and Curse Mastery delays that, I would think the advantage goes to the side of not running Curse Mastery, even ignoring that you can replace it with another perk. For bossing, it remains a no-brainer, where your damage isn't really from the curse anyway. I would recommend running Power of Sacrifice instead of Curse of Pain for bossing, as it lasts longer and still lets you heal. Next up, when seeing that having higher cast speed makes Ray of Darkness channel duration shorter, I had a burning question that was unanswered. What happens if you have super low cast speed? How low can I even get my cast speed? I could think of 3 ways to lower cast speed: Demon Armor, Curse of Weakness, and a Cobweb. Check out this glorious clip of the longest rod I could muster.
Okay. There's a skeleton. That's it. I'm gonna die.
There is some viability to killing Cave Troll using Rod because of his weakness to dark damage, but I couldn't get a kit using intentionally low cast speed to really work. It's also tragic that the Eldritch Shield buff gives you more cast speed than damage, because it would be fun to stack up all of the dark damage buffs and have a crazy long, crazy deadly rod. Alas. Another question. What about health potions? Those are kind of like a good Curse of Pain, so what does having buff duration do? I assume lots of Dark and Darker players know this, but I figured I would include it anyway. The potion calculates its healing per tick, intending to do it over the listed duration, and then that buff can be extended to increase total healing without changing healing per tick. As a quick example, drinking this potion with 31% buff duration is going to make the effect last for 26 seconds, and it's going to heal me for 33 health, because I also have 26% magical power. So what about Potion Chugger? Fortunately, it is simple, unlike Curse Mastery. The listed duration is cut in half, while the intended total healing is also increased by 20%. This is all good. You heal 20% more in total in half the time, with more than double the healing per tick of someone without the perk. That's all the info that I want to present to the average viewer. Thank you for watching, and feel free to drop off. But for anyone who might want to do their own damage testing in this game, I'd like to provide a few tips and resources. First, in order to reliably calculate anything, you need to know exactly how much health your willing test subject is starting with. The number on the health bar is also being rounded up, but we can calculate it ourselves from the vigor and strength. Don't have them wear any gear with health bonus or max health unless needed, to keep things simple. There is a calculator spreadsheet linked on the wiki that after some testing I accepted as accurate. I have linked it, and it is also included in my spreadsheet as the second page. Second, try to reduce variables and change them little by little to see if your math can predict exactly where changes happen. I took many test cases with COP with lots of different stats. I also recorded the reported health bar health after each tick. This gives me tons of data to test my prediction formula against. I have included all the resources used to make this in the description. Thanks again for watching. I hope you learned something, and have fun in your raids.